Well, you can turn to Proverbs chapter 3. And as you turn there, I want to tell you something that I've been telling my kids for years. And for a season of my life, I've said it lots. And it's simply this: follow Jesus and you will be blessed. Follow Jesus and you will be blessed. I believe our good God gives good rules designed to bring good results. We sang about that this morning. Our good God gives good rules designed to bring good results. A few, well, about 7 weeks ago, our family, we had our farewell at Bowden Church that we were involved with for a number of years. And as we said farewell, they did a wonderful time of blessing us and sharing stories. And one of the people who spoke, he's a quiet man, and I've known that through the years that when he speaks, I want to listen. And he shared something really profound to me in the fact that he said, like, during that time, sang a couple songs. And as a worship team, he's like, if I was to choose a song, I would choose Good, Good Father. And he said the reason for that is because you taught us we have a good Father. And I thought of that over 11 years of ministry. The thing he got most was, we have a good God. And I was like, wow. I'm so proud of that we have a good God. You know, this saying, follow Jesus and we will be blessed, you know, it's something that Jesus himself said. Different words. John 10:10 says, I have come that you may have life and have it to the full. Or, in some translations say, have it abundant life. Now, we also remember Jesus promised other things, like in this world you will have trouble. We've all experienced that. But he did promise that he wanted to bring us life and have it to the full. There's a general rule in the Bible, and it's this: follow God's ways in the Bible and you will have success. Or you will be blessed. You will be prosperous, as Solomon says in Proverbs 3. A couple weeks ago when I was here, I said this verse, Joshua 1:8. Keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you'll be prosperous and successful. I think of tomorrow's Family Day, day to celebrate family. I think about how if we follow God's good plan for family, we are blessed. And you think about it, you go through all the statistics of stuff. If you follow God's design for the family, you end up having healthier families. You end up having happier families. You end up being prosperous at work or in relationships. Families. Following God's ways. There's always exceptions. There are circumstances that happen in our lives. There are sufferings that happen. We live in a broken world. A couple friends of mine have just this last week lost a sister to COVID. And it's one of those things that happens. We live in a broken world. But generally, when you follow God, follow His ways, we are blessed. Proverbs 3 verses 1 and 2 starts out this way. My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commands in your heart. For they will prolong your life many years and bring you peace and prosperity. Here, Solomon talks about some wonderful things. I call it the 3 P's. He says in verse 2, prolonged life, peace, and prosperity. See, Proverbs are general rules and not promises. Many of us read a proverb as like, oh, that's a promise for our life. No, Proverbs are general rules. It's sort of like this. If you do this, then you will generally have this result. That's what a proverb is. For example, probably one of the most famous proverbs on child rearing. Start children off in the way they should go, then generally, even when they are old, we will not turn from it. That's what it means. General rule. We all know the exceptions of child being raised in a good family and suddenly goes off sideways. But generally, good parents raise good children. general rule. Now, in this next passage, I want to talk about 5 keys to living a prosperous life. This blessed life that Solomon talks about. And Solomon gives a command in the first verse, and then the next verse, he will go and give the reward of what that command is. So, let's keep reading. Verses 3 and 4. Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. This one is this. To be prosperous, live with love and faithfulness. Live with the virtues of love and faithfulness. Just think of Canada 2022. What would be the virtues that they would talk about here in our nation? Well, I think about that, and I think probably the 2 top virtues to talk about would be tolerance and inclusivity. Do tolerance and inclusivity lead to prosperity? Now, what about Superman? What would Superman say are the best 2 virtues? Well, he'd say truth and justice. But does that always win favor with others? If you're always after truth and justice, well, you could be quite legalistic in that matter. Solomon writes wisely, love and faithfulness. Love, in the Hebrew, is the word hesed, which means loyalty to one's covenant or commitment. The Old Testament uses this word to describe God's love towards His people. It's often translated steadfast love or faithful love. A love that remains faithful no matter the changing circumstances. Think of marriage. Things change over a long time over marriage. This summer we're going to be celebrating 20 years of marriage. And, things change. Hair colors change. Wrinkles. Locations where you live. All these things different change. But marriage, you to have faithful, steadfast love. And you keep going. The reward is this. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man. I think about this and I think faithful love truly wins the favor of others. And I've learned this over the last couple months. When we were leaving Bowden, one of our good friends is Lonnie, and he came into the office and he said this. He said, "You have been faithful to this church, and I really, really appreciate it." I can say without a doubt that we finished strong and we were faithful to the very end of God's timing and God's calling. And the reward is this. I am not leaving not only on good terms, but with their prayers and blessing of these people. And so they are praying for us where God leads. When I've learned this as well with working at the school, and I end up coaching basketball. I've done that for the last, 10 years in the Bowden School, junior high boys. And the principal, he said it, about 3 different times. He said, you're going to be really missed. And he said this last week as we were taking our pictures for it. He said, just drop by the office anytime and just come over to chat. And just that amazing thing to be faithful to the very end, and how I've seen that being a reward. Well, faithful love truly wins the favor of others, but faithful love also wins the favor of God. God rewards faithfulness. We see that God gives greater responsibilities to those who prove themselves faithful. Jesus said in Matthew 25:21, on the parable of the talents, He said, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things." Faithfulness wins the favor of God. The question is this: do you have the virtue of faithful love? Do faithful love? Do you do faithful love in your family? How about at work? How about at church? In your relationships? If you have faithful love, you will win the favor of God and man. And you will be blessed because of it. Well, the next thing Solomon talks about with prosperity is two verses that we are all well aware of. Probably have them memorized. It says this, verses 5 and 6, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Many of us has taken this verse as a promise, but we must remember where it's written. It's written in Proverbs. Proverbs are general rules and not promises. The problem is some people take this as an absolute promise. They expect that God's going to put this LED Vegas type light there that's going to tell them exactly where to go. Every time. These verses are a call to trust God when making decisions. Trust literally means to lie helpless and face down in this verse. That's the position. It's the idea, it pictures a servant waiting for the master's command in readiness to obey, or a defeated soldier yielding himself to the conquering general. You get the idea of the type of trust that God wants from us in this verse? One thing I've been learning is a simple thing. It's 3 simple words. It helps me in life. It's simply this. Listen, as in listen to God. Trust God in whatever He says, and then simply obey. Listen, trust, obey. It means that we need to depend on God. Listen to God, trust God, obey God. As this verse says, in all your ways, submit to Him. That's how we do it at the end. We obey God and submit to Him. So it's a call to trust God when making decisions. It's also a call to search for God's direction when making decisions. This verse should lead us to prayer. It should lead us to pray. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Leads us to prayer, praying for God's leading. It leads you to reading God's Word as you search for that answer. It leads you to asking your Christian community about the upcoming decision. I have found God speaks through Christian brothers and sisters in many different situations. And the reward is this: when you do it, He will make your paths straight. Trusting God leads you to making the right decisions. Notice, it does not say easy paths. When you follow God, it's not easy paths. When Jesus called His disciples, He said, "Deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me." That doesn't sound easy. Notice it does not say clear paths. Life often doesn't have clear paths. Often trusting God involves a lot of waiting in silence. And we don't like that. But that's what God calls. David in the Psalms repeats many times like this, and you don't have to go far, but for example, Psalm 10 verse 1, "Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble?" Here's a righteous man looking for God's direction, and he has to wait. And he waits for God to make His path straight. God's path is there, but it's often not easily seen. Notice what it does say. It says, straight paths. Your paths will be straight. Path straight referred to travel made straight by level paths, as in removing the obstacle. There could be many obstacles in the way when you're traveling there. God's light shines on your next step in your journey, and we must trust for that next step. It's like going through a forest, a dark forest with just a lantern. Often when we're trusting God, all we can see is just a little bit in front of us, a little bit around us. We just know the next step. When we're trusting God, we just know what the next step is. Often in life. So we trust God in decisions, and He will make your path straight. Well, let's keep reading. Verses 7 and 8. "Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and shun evil. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones." The third way we can be prosperous in our life is to fear God and shun evil. It starts off with, "Do not be wise in your own eyes." In other words, don't do your own thing. Or as the New Living Translation says it, Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. Don't be impressed with it. I find this describes Canada today, doesn't it? We look to our own wisdom, our own morality, our own ethics, our own virtues. We are warned in verses 7 and 8 to not make up our own morality. We are told simply, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do your own thing. Instead, to live a prosperous life, it says, fear the Lord and shun evil. Can you imagine that message in Ottawa today? Fear the Lord and shun evil? That's to be prosperous? Fearing the Lord is actually something can be really hard to understand. We see it a few times in the Bible, but this is what I found the simplest definition of fearing the Lord is. To fear the Lord is to practice reverent obedience. Reverent obedience. I was praying this week Psalm 112, and verse 1 stood out to me. It said, "Blessed are those who fear the Lord, who find great delights in His commands." You fear God, you find great delight in His commands, His rules, His good rules. When I think about fearing the Lord, I think of a couple things. The first thing is we follow God out of reverence for Him, out of respect. As in, we know God is up there, we are here. We respect Him for who He is. Out of love and respect, we do it. And also, the second thing I think about is we fear the Lord out of fearing His good discipline. If you read a little further, verses 11 and 12, it says, "My son, do not despise the Lord's discipline, and do not resent His rebuke, because the Lord disciplines those He loves, as a father the son He delights in." We don't like that word discipline, but God's had it in there. I remember as a kid, I did something wrong. I can't remember what it was, but I was a little guy. And my mom knew it, and so she opened a drawer in that kitchen. Do you know what drawer that was? You do. It was the one with the wooden spoon. And so I did something wrong, and so she went and she whacked me on the bottom, and that spoon cracked in half and broke across the floor. Well, I thought that was hilarious as a kid, so I just started laughing away, and my mom got mad. Oh, did she get mad? And then she just said, "Just wait till your father gets home." And then I knew the fear of Dad. Fear. God has to discipline us because we do mistakes. He does good discipline because He wants His children to turn out good. And so He does that. He helps us follow the right way, to shun evil. Proverbs goes on, Proverbs 8 verse 13 says, "To fear the Lord is to hate evil." Proverbs 16 verse 6 says, "Through the fear of the Lord, evil is avoided." You get this repeated message? If you fear God, you shun evil, you avoid evil, you don't do evil. You follow God. The reward is this. It's health to your body and nourishment to your bones, as verse 8 says. Fearing God results in a healthy body. Now, does that make sense to you? How avoiding evil keeps to a healthy body? Well, the reason is this, is because spiritual health and physical health are interconnected. It's interconnected. Spiritual health actually will help you avoid a whole lot of harmful habits, addictions, and anxiety. But there is this connection that when we're spiritually down, our physical body feels it as well. We're interconnected that way. Proverbs 10:27 gives a similar promise. "The fear of the Lord adds length to life, but the years of the wicked are cut short." Proverbs 23:17 and 18. "Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off." So the question is this: are you living your life shunning evil? Are you living your life shunning evil, avoiding it, not doing it, but following God's good ways. Because if you follow God's good ways, you will experience the prosperity He wants you to have. Next step, fourth, we're called to give to God. Verses 9 and 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Truth is this, God is honored when we give. When we give to someone, we are honoring them. We are saying that they are above us, and so we honor them with it. God is greater than us. And we honor Him by giving our first and our best. That's what it says here. Our first fruits. Solomon says, give your first fruits to God. For myself, I try to do my monthly giving at the very beginning of the month. That way I could give Him my first and my best. When we give our first, we demonstrate trust in God. Do we not? When we give Him our very first. I think of the Israelites, the first part of their harvest they were supposed to give to God. Well, that's an act of trust that God will bless the rest of the harvest. And so we do the same. We trust Him. If we do not give to God, it shows that we do not trust God to provide and to bless us. The reward is this: God blesses those who give to Him. It says, then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Talking about abundant crops. Your needs are met. What is there? Solomon's father David wrote what he observed in life, and I found this quite amazing, his observance in older years. He said this in Psalm 37, the wicked borrow and do not repay, but the righteous give generously. Those the Lord blesses will inherit the land, but those He curses will be destroyed. I was young, and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken, or their children begging bread. They are always generous and lend freely. Their children will be a blessing. Have you ever seen a generous person begging for bread? Thought about it. I haven't. I've seen people begging, but I haven't seen a generous person yet in my life. And David observed that when he was king. Now, sometimes God blesses us financially now. He does that. I have seen this principle to be true. God is blessed when I've given to Him. I just want to share just one story because it was the first significant time when I've seen this happen. It was my days in Bible school. And when you're in Bible school, you're poor. Fourth year Bible school student. It was missions week, and God told me to give $100 to this certain mission. I'm like, why? I'm poor. But God, I felt that impression, so I just gave the $100. Here it is, and walked away. Well, 2 days later, I'm out. I end up going to Grand Prairie, and I'm discipling this teenage kid, and I was meeting with him, every couple weeks and doing discipleship with him. And his dad meets me at the door, and he gives me $100. He says, "Thanks for being, helping my kid and discipling him." And I was like, "Wow, I gave to you that $100, but you wanted to give to me." Well, later this summer, I heard a little bit of the rest of the story. I ended up golfing with this dad again, and as I was golfing there, I shared this story of giving $100 and him giving back $100, and he's like, "Wow," and he's like, "Do you remember that?" I'm like, and he's like, "Yes, I remember that. I remember I had this feeling that I was supposed to give you $100. Like God told me to give this feeling." And I talked to my wife, Patricia, and she's like, "Okay, well, you better give." So he gave $100. He had no idea what it was. And yet it was a beautiful life lesson for me that I have carried on for over 20 years. Sometimes God blesses us financially now. And sometimes God gives the blessing only in heaven. Jesus said this in Matthew 19:29, "And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or fields for my sake will receive 100 times as much and will inherit eternal life." Sometimes that blessing, that prosperity only comes when we get to heaven. And sometimes God blesses us here as well. So the question is this: are you giving or are you hoarding? What is it you're doing? I find givers are blessed by God. They're the ones who are prosperous. And I find this general rule that God hoards His resources to those who hoard to Him. So we're called to give to God. And the last one is this. It's called seek wisdom. The fifth one, to be prosperous. We're going to read just a few verses 13 to 18. Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better returns than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand, and in her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are pleasant ways, and all her paths are peace. She is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. If I'd keep reading chapter 3 and all the way through chapter 4, it'd be the same idea of Solomon saying, seek wisdom. You can't seek wisdom. You need to seek wisdom. Blessed are those who find wisdom. New Living Translation says, joyful are those who find wisdom. Joyful, blessed. It's better than gold, silver, or rubies, or money, or cryptocurrency in our day. It's better than those. Wisdom is better. But how many of us actually seek wisdom? Do we seek it out? I find Proverbs voices a desperate pursuit for wisdom. It's Solomon saying, kids, get wisdom. And then the next thing, he's like, get wisdom. And he keeps shaking the kids, get wisdom. You got to get wisdom. Chapter 4, verse 7 says this, the beginning of wisdom is this, get wisdom. Though it costs you all you have, get understanding. We're to seek wisdom. Reminds me of Jesus' parable of the treasure in the field, in which the man sells all he has in order to get that treasure, to buy that field. The field that Solomon's talking about is wisdom. We need to buy that field with everything we have. We just finishing up the Winter Olympics. Those athletes, they have sold basically everything they have in order to compete and try to get medals at the Olympics. They have gone years. It's not just a 1-year commitment or a 2-year commitment. It's like a 6-year, 8-year commitment in order to have a chance for a medal at the Olympics. Dedicate your life to pursuing wisdom. So the question comes, how do you pursue wisdom? Well, we're called to increase knowledge. I find that avid readers are avid learners. If you read lots of things to increase your knowledge, you learn lots. Myself, I have a time every day where I schedule 15 minutes, of which I'm going to do some reading that's going to make me think. And it's going to get me closer to God. I do that. Schedule 15 minutes. And then sometimes I do more in the evening or something like that at different times. And then I also, of course, have another time when I read my Bible every day. And I read that to gain wisdom, the author of all wisdom. I find to pursue wisdom, I need to surround myself with wise people. So I've surrounded myself with other pastors and other people who are wise, have life experience. And I want to keep growing and learning from them. So I surround myself with them. We can pursue wisdom in so many different ways. We have so much availability right now. We could pursue wisdom through seminars, through classes, through schooling, through podcasts, through sermons, so many different ways. Some of us aren't readers. Some of us need visual learning or audio learning. There are ways to do that, and we can pursue it. The point is, pursue wisdom. That's it. Pursue it. And the result is this. And you got to love this list that Solomon gives: long life, riches, honor, pleasant ways, paths of peace. Wow. Other words, he's saying a prosperous, blessed life if you seek wisdom. This is what every advertisement promises but doesn't deliver. Think of that list. Wisdom will help you avoid harm and choose good. Solomon goes on and says, she is a tree of life to those who take hold of her. Those who hold her fast will be blessed. It's a picture of a flourishing and growing tree full of life, as Jesus would say. If you're not sure about the necessity of pursuing wisdom, all you have to do is read the first 9 chapters of Proverbs, and you'll get the point again and again and again. Pursue wisdom. Well, we've looked at 5 ways Solomon tells us to be prosperous. And I want to sum it up in this way. Trust in God to live the prosperous life. Trust in God to live the prosperous life. We looked at 5 different things. And it's really scary to see 5 different things. And I like the 5 things to be put on the board. But I want you to look through that list and see if there's one thing that God's calling you to do. Because to do 5 is basically nearly impossible. Maybe there's one thing that stuck out to you today. We talked about living with love and faithfulness. That talks about character, inner character. Live being a trustworthy person. Living that way. Maybe God's calling you, you have a decision to make, and you need to trust Him in that decision. As we look at verses 5 and 6. Maybe God's calling you, there's something in your life that you need to get right with. And He's telling you, fear God and shun evil. As in other words, trust God's commands and His discipline. Get it right. Get rid of that thing so you can live the blessed life God wants you to do. Maybe He's telling you to give to God. Trust God's provision and give what He's called you to. Maybe last, seek wisdom, as in trust God's wisdom. Trust Him in the way. It reminds me of a hymn. Talks about the happy life. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. Want to have that prosperous life? Trust Him.